We are beings that love to run after emotions. Even if a person points the finger at others and calls them, oh, you're just being emotional, when you look at them carefully, when you observe them, follow them, closely monitor them, you will see that they, just like any other living being, craves the touch of emotions. We find life meaningless without being triggered. So that it has to be understood. Why though? Why do we crave it? Why do we find ourselves in need of the presence of emotions? Because we're bored, plain and simple. Simply because the mind has not found itself in a space of tranquility for more than a few seconds. So we have even a tolerance gauge for how much tranquility we can withstand, how much silence we can withstand or tolerate. We talk about it, it's in lofty terms, but when it has become a little bit too much, we start moving. We become jittery as a June bug. We want to move out of that state. We want to introduce a new trigger, something, a color, something that can break the monotony, because that is how tranquility or silence really feels like to a mind that has not yet evolved itself, developed itself. This is why we must practice meditation. To gain the understanding, of what is my capacity? How deep can I really go? Where does this road, this path, this experience really take me? Can I allow this experience, can I allow this state of being to develop into whatever it is going to develop? And this is where we put the spotlight on the drive to have control, to want to have and maintain control. This is at the core. Because when you are bored, when the person is, whether they're meditating or whether in their daily life, suddenly they drop into this almost dead zone where there's nothing for them to do. There's no interest, there's nothing, and they think there's something wrong. They have to fill it up with something. Because life is not supposed to be so, quote-unquote, dull. And this happens so quickly at times that we don't even realize it. And with the dopamine addiction that we have today, where there's constant opportunities for exposure to triggers, as if we didn't have enough, as if we didn't have the 6 sense organs, the primary of which is the mind. But your eyes are picking up information. Your ears, your nose, your tongue, flavors, right? Your body. is always looking for something, something nice for it to make contact with. And similarly with the remaining 5. As I said, primarily the mind. Because even if you somehow shut your sensory perceptions from all angles, from all sides, your mind, that is what you have to really be working with at that point. And this is where the battle begins. This is where, during meditation or on retreats, this is the real battleground. And when you are successful at observing the hindrances, instead of trying to use a sledgehammer of some sort, mental mind, some type of meditation object, sledgehammer, whatever your technique is, to push the hindrances away, such as sleepiness, drowsiness, procrastination, restlessness, worry, doubting, or sensual desires that come in, or anger and aversion and hatred towards, the things that you're experiencing or why you're there. All these things, we call them nivarana, or obstacles, hindrances on the path for you, of you, developing the mind. As I said, evolving the mind. Otherwise, reading the books will not help you, ultimately, because they're just words, ultimately. What we seem to forget is that words are merely approximations. Words are mere approximations. At best, by the way, on a good day. But the problem is that our brains function with grammar. Our brains function with linguistics to the point where we make believe that these things do exist. And unless your living experience matches that concept that you're holding on to in your mind, in your brain, unless it matches it, then it becomes unacceptable for you to live in that moment. Boredom does that. Boredom really means you've just given yourself a clean slate, a crisp white sheet of paper for you to start something new. It doesn't have a dot on it. Most people don't know what to do with that clean sheet of paper, because it doesn't say anything about yesterday's experiences. I mean, come on, I was going through such terrible hardship. I had to encounter this person, that thing, that situation. And so what do when we wake up in the morning? We regurgitate those memories. We bring them up again. We start tossing that hot potato. Even if it's frozen, solid, we heat it up with what? Emotions. Such as, well, I can't believe she said that to me. How could she? What did she mean by that? Let me call her up. What did that that boss of mine say by that gesture? Why was I not invited? Etc., etc., etc. What just happened? You just gave yourself a major dose of emotions, triggering. And emotions cannot, function without the triggering agent. They are it. For that reason, we sit. For that reason, we slow things down. For us, in the mind, where you're able to catch your reactions before they turn into reactions. You're observing, you're slowing things down to the point where you're observing and seeing the beginning, the middle, and the end. In Buddhism, we call it arising and cessation. Now, this is happening all the time. Every single thought we have, just like every single breath we have, whether it's breathing in or breathing out individually. Each of these has its point of arising, its midpoint, where it's at its maximum, and its ceasing. Similarly with the thoughts. Now, the thoughts are going to work much faster. Initially, we might only be able to detect the beginning if we're getting to practice well enough with meditation, what we call mindfulness proper, where you're engaging the whole body. You're noticing not just your mind, but you're noticing the body as well. When you're about to move your hand, your fingers, you need to turn your head, let's say. Before it happens, you get, if you practice long enough, constantly, continuously, and I'm not saying going and sitting somewhere constantly meditating. No, the whole point of meditation is to bring meditation and invite it into your life. That's the real arena for meditation. That's where it all happens. That's called mindful living. So as you're moving, you start noticing that point right before you really get pulled into the story, that movement. And you start noticing the arising. But the problem is the mind, because it loves movement, it loves being triggered, it loves emotional colorations. It will jump from one experience to the next. It won't like to stay with the hand or a finger that is moving. Now, all of a sudden, it will detect a certain skin sensation, maybe an itching sensation. You want to scratch a certain area of your body, or you want to touch your knee for some reason, all of a sudden. And then, it becomes really like, I have to do this. If I don't, all hell's going to break loose. I need to do this. This is essential for me to do. And the moment you do, guess what? Something else happens. Oh, what is that? Oh, what's that sound? What's that smell? Well, let me check my phone. Oh, let me look over there. Or dwell on a certain memory, a concept. This is what the Buddha calls the monkey mind. Jumping from one branch to the next, one branch to the next. Always. Never sticking around. It's that initial start that excites, because you're basically like a little infant who needs to be distracted constantly because the mind is going agitated, basically. Now, with practice, what happens is, when you're observing the fact, you're finally able to see that nothing stays the same. Nothing is staying the same, despite all your best efforts. You see how there is impermanence. Things are not constant. Things are always changing. As I said, against your very, very best efforts. So now the attention moves from the arising of that sensation, that movement, to the cessation of that movement. You start noticing the end point of the breath, when it's a full exhalation or it's a full inhalation. And you start seeing, with the impermanence, with what we call anicca, that sense of non-constancy, changeability that is ever present. It's always happening. With that, you start seeing and really feeling a certain level of sorrow. You might call it disappointment, you might call it dismay, you might call it sadness, but it's essentially painful. Why? Because you just wanted to keep doing that. Scratching the knee, looking over there, and that blue, sky, listening to that lovely piece of music, let's say, or whatever it was that grabbed your attention initially. But because of impermanence being present, you notice it fades away. It's fading away. It's a continuously occurring phenomenon, experience. And it is causing you, pushing you to move to the next experience. Now, meditation allows us to observe this without fooling ourselves. That's why real meditation does not need objects. New ideas, new things, new images. You don't need them because these are all distractions. These are all what we call nimittas, or signs, essentially. Signs on the external, which turn into signs on the internal. Meaning you start seeing things in your mind. Many people get stuck on that phenomenon. But whether it's external or internal, it really doesn't matter. You're still distracted. You're not practicing. You're still like that little monkey or that little child, the infant, who's reaching out to grab this or that colorful thing. So meditation is for mature people who are ready to break through that dead zone of boredom, but in the right way. Because it's all happening in you already. That's why breathing, for example, is one of the great meditation tools you can use. But something more on the grosser level is the body as it moves in space. Or feelings. When you're able to really sit with awareness, walk with awareness, lie down with awareness, stand with awareness, suddenly you start noticing other fluctuations that are happening in your stream of consciousness, if you will, such as emotions. Because the residual effect of the experiences you had earlier, 5 minutes ago or 5 years ago, that's woken up because of a certain memory you had, which was triggered because of a certain contact you made with something, a sound or a picture, suddenly you're noticing feelings. Now, if you have proper attentiveness, you're going to look at the feeling and not be pulled or have any certain preference towards a certain kind of feeling, such as, is this feeling giving me pleasure? Is this feeling the opposite of that, giving me pain, displeasure? Or is it something that is neither? Neutral. Which again takes us back to the dreaded area of boredom. But that neutral feeling is key, the Buddha says again and again, because that is the majority. In majority cases, that is the type of feeling that we have, which we run away from. That's why you want to go and change your wardrobe. That's why you want to change your things that you do, you engage in. That's why you need to look and move the mouse around, try to go and find another point of contact. Move your attention towards something else. Why? Because again, that clean sheet of paper is in front of you and it is not interesting. Meanwhile, life is happening. There's all the interest that you could have, but we're not sticking around to really understand. And that is where so much is happening. If you're a curious person, you're going to see a lot happening all the time. Now I'm giving it to you in describing it to you in very gross terms, in fact, because when I say rising and falling, you might think of it as temporally as lasting that long, but it's not. It's happening so quickly. And that is what you're able to detect as you sit, as you observe. So as I was saying, with practice you will be able to see more and more and more of the cessation of that experience. And that, as I said, it's anicca, realization, understanding that gets deeper and deeper and deeper with practice of impermanence, of non-constancy. And that itself will cause you to have a different outlook on things, and especially experience, especially emotions, because you see that nothing sticks. Nothing will stand, nothing will remain, nothing will really be what it claims to be when you run after it. That empty promise is discovered for what it is. That sense of empty gratification is discovered by you, no one else. It's no longer a word you're reading. Remember, words are mere approximations at best. In the best of circumstances, they're just approximations. They're really not, they're incapable of capturing experience, life, especially in terms of meditation. These realizations are directly to be experienced by the person. That's what the Buddha says. Pacchattam veditabbo vinyuhi. These are things to be experienced by the wise for themselves, by and through themselves. Because, the person is not going to just overnight, on seeing the cessation of that emotion or experience, lose interest suddenly and become awakened. No. Or see through the facade. No, it's not going to happen just that quickly. We're very slow learners, most of us. We need to observe it again and again and again, and fortunately, life does give us plenty of opportunities, even within a single minute, if we're there to observe. And as you're observing that there is no such thing as satisfaction in any of the six senses I mentioned, in any of these jumping around from branch to branch like a monkey, there's nothing that can really satisfy you, despite the empty promises. So, when you're doing this enough time, you become wiser enough to see. You're looking at things with honest eyes. And then you see, and you say to yourself, I have to cut myself loose from all of this. I'm tired of this. This is maturity. This is not you becoming hopeless, by the way. In a world where it's all about running after excitement, emotions, as I began this talk, this is the other end of it. This is looking at it from a wider perspective. You're seeing things for what they are. As soon as you're able to see, because when you're disappointed, you're the only one who's on the grill. You're the only one who's burning, because you ran after this. and you tossed yourself into a hot charcoal burning pit, disappointment after disappointment. And you say, okay, when am I going to stop doing this? And then you step out. You step out of this. It's not necessarily an active, physically, stepping out necessarily, but it's just a change in attitude in your mind. You still are going to see the rising of certain emotions, memories, experiences, sights, sounds, smells, etc., ideas popping in your head. You're still going to experience those, but you're not as attached to them as you were before. They lose their grip on you. The emotions are still going to be there. You're not an automaton. You're not a piece of rock. You're observing them, but you are not falling for them, the empty promises. And your breathing changes. Your attitude changes. Your emotions become meaningful. Your practice deepens exponentially, I might add. Depending on, of course, how much you put into this, how much you carry these, what we call sati and sampajanya, the mindfulness, proper mindfulness and full awareness with you. Because with this type of mindfulness, this level of mindfulness that carries with it, bears with it, right view, it's inevitable. If you're maintaining it, it's inevitable for you to also have panya, which is wisdom, discernment, understanding. That is direct. And you can't have somebody else's understanding serving you as yours. It won't have the same impact because it's just somebody else's word, an approximation, nothing more, ultimately. Unless you bring it in, unless you invite it into your every moment, as much as you can. There's going to be slip-ups. Yes, of course. This is not done overnight. So, carefully re-examine your relationship to emotions. Observe the body and see its connection to your preferences with certain feelings or mental states that you prefer more so than others. And above all, look carefully at whether there's agitation. And remember, every movement indicates there's agitation, by the way. In order for the monkey to jump, to leave, or to want to reach while it's grabbing onto this branch, to reach over to that branch, it needs to reach out with the other hand to that branch, or simply let go of this and jump with both hands to the other. We might not literally be jumping from branch to branch, but we're doing so faster than a monkey, in fact, with our concepts, our likes and dislikes, our thoughts, our movements even with the body. Especially with this dopamine kicks, these spikes that we're always looking for, which is ruining lives. Everyone's life is affected by this. Everywhere. I thought some parts of the world were immune until I went to India, until I went to Sri Lanka, to other parts of Asia, to tiny little villages, and you think no one, not everyone has phones. No. Everybody has a phone. Over there, it's actually cheaper to obtain. In people's minds, the mind is the emotional state. So when I say mind, everything is included, by the way. It's a full package. agitated. There's agitation all over. Of course, you're not going to be able to change the world, especially when you can't even get a grip on your state of mind. And that's what meditation is trying to do. And that's the only place where you can gain happiness, where you have some hope of attaining tranquility. And the more understanding there is, the more wisdom opens up, more time opens up. And with time, you don't look at the open time for yourself as a moment for you to dread, because now I have to fill it up with something else because it's boredom. No. This is where your deluded thinking gets to be removed, wiped out. And because there's understanding, it's like somebody turned on the light in a dark, dark room, and all of a sudden darkness is no more. That's what happens. Boredom suddenly is gone. This is when life has true meaning for you. And even if you don't do anything, as it relates to meditative monks, somebody looking at them, observing them from the outside, especially when they're in their own residence, wherever they live, wherever they practice, whatever quote-unquote activities they're involved in, an observer looking at such a person, they will say, what a boring life. Don't you get bored? Where did you have your phone? Do you have your phone? Do you have a Facebook account? You must have something. Otherwise, I would go crazy. Right? This is what the average human being would think, looking at such a person. But they would be clueless, because the mind of such a person who's a practitioner is so full in its emptiness, because it's full of life, but it's empty of junk. It's empty of running after that. Desire is not there. There's no monkey to be jumping around, because there are no branches. There's no need to pick up and go somewhere else, and then pick up and go somewhere else, because that is agitation. Sukhihotu.